In March of 2024, the Nintendo Switch will be 7 years old. Already, it's one of the longest life cycles for a Nintendo console ever, which of course means that it's about time for a Switch successor. Sure enough, there has been a deluge of leaks in recent months that have claimed that a Switch 2 is indeed in the works and targeting a release in the relatively near future. And those leaks have also spilled the beans on plenty of potential details on the console. Obviously, when it comes to leaks and rumors, some healthy skepticism is always justified, especially when dealing with a company as notoriously secretive and unpredictable as Nintendo. But here we are. Nonetheless, we're going to go over some of the biggest and most prominent details on the Switch 2 that might have a good chance of actually being accurate. Hybrid system. Let's start with the basics. Nintendo revolutionized the industry and the way we engage with hardware with the Switch's hybrid model, allowing users to decide whether they want to use it as a console or a handheld. According to a report published by VGC in July, the next Nintendo console is also set to be a hybrid device, and will also use cartridges for physical media. That's probably the one detail that most would have expected anyway, but given how experimental Nintendo likes to be with its hardware, you can never really take anything for granted. 4K 60fps. The Switch's aforementioned hybrid model is obviously one of its biggest strengths, but it does come at the cost of significantly weaker hardware, which means technology-wise, games on the platform are lagging several years behind the current industry standards. Now, Nintendo has been out of the power race for a long time, but with the Switch 2, it seems like the company is paying a bit more attention on that front. Speaking on his podcast in September, prominent insider Nate the Hate claimed that at Gamescom, a souped-up version of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was one of 2 tech demos for the Switch 2 that Nintendo allegedly showed off behind closed doors to select developers. That version of the game, interestingly enough, was apparently running at 4K and 60fps. Now, an upgraded version of nearly a 7-year-old game running at 4K 60fps on the Switch 2 doesn't really mean that all games will be able to, but it does mean that the console is capable of that output, which isn't something you would have expected from a Nintendo console. Ray tracing. Yet another example of the Switch 2 putting more emphasis on the technical side of things than its predecessor is its alleged support for ray tracing. In a report published in September, VGC claimed that Epic Games' Unreal Engine 5 tech demo was also one of the things that Nintendo showed running on the Switch 2 hardware to developers at Gamescom, and that tech demo featured advanced ray tracing. DLSS. Another key feature that the Switch 2 is supposedly utilizing is NVIDIA's AI supersampling technology, DLSS, which is something that multiple leaks have been claiming for quite some time. That seems to be the one thing that pretty much all leaks deem irrefutable, in fact. More specifically, according to Nate the Hate, the Switch 2 will use DLSS 3.5, and that will also go hand in hand with support for ray reconstruction, which is supersampling technology enabled by DLSS 3.5 that enhances ray trace lighting and reflections. Visuals compared to PS5 and Xbox Series X and S. To give you an idea of how effective DLSS can be when paired with decent hardware, it's been claimed that the Switch 2 will be capable of outputting visuals comparable to what you see on PS5 and Xbox Series X and S. To be completely clear, that doesn't mean that the Switch 2 specs will be in the same ballparks as Sony and Microsoft consoles. When it comes to raw power, the Nintendo device is likely still going to be lagging behind. Third-party support. If the Switch 2 will indeed be capable of rendering current-gen quality visuals, you'd expect it to have much stronger third-party support than its predecessor, and it seems like that is indeed going to be the case. In October, prominent leaker Tom Henderson said that we'll be seeing a lot of multi-form third-party titles getting simultaneous Switch releases alongside PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. Meanwhile, Felipe Lima, editor-in-chief of Brazilian outlet Universal Nintendo, has claimed that Far Cry 7, which is allegedly targeting a fall 2025 launch, will release day 1 for the Switch 2, and that Monster Hunter 6 will also release for the console. Screen. The Switch OLED model has an absolutely gorgeous screen, one that almost makes the base version of the console feel obsolete in comparison, though disappointingly it seems like the Switch 2 won't be following suit. Back in July, VGC claimed that the Switch 2 would feature an LCD screen, similar to the base Switch model, with Nintendo looking to compensate for larger costs required elsewhere for the console. On the other hand, according to Nate the Hate, the screen is allegedly going to be an 8-inch one as compared to 6.2 inches for the base Switch and 7 inches for the Switch OLED. Internal storage. One of the aforementioned aspects of the Switch 2 that will require more manufacturing costs is apparently going to be its internal storage, which makes sense given the fact that the console is going to be running games with much larger storage requirements, if its leaked hardware details are accurate. Nate the Hate speculated in August that it could have 512GB of internal storage, though there isn't a lot of concrete information on this front just yet. RAM. Another tidbit related to the Switch's successor hardware that was leaked out, courtesy of Universal Nintendo's Felipe Lima, is that it's going to have 12GB of RAM, which isn't terrible by any means by modern console standards. For comparison's sake, the PS5 and Xbox Series X both have a 16GB of RAM, while the Xbox Series S has a 10GB of RAM. What kind of RAM and clock speed we're looking at for the Switch 2 exactly, remains to be seen. Nintendo accounts. Unlike pretty much everything else we've spoken about here so far, this one is all but confirmed. Nintendo has said on a couple occasions over the past year that the Nintendo account service is going to be used to make the transition between the Switch and its successor smoother than it ever has been in the past between Nintendo generations. That would mean that this will be the first time that two Nintendo consoles will share the same underlying network base. 2 SKUs. Interestingly enough, it seems like Nintendo might also have plans to release multiple variants of the Switch 2 together, similar to what Sony and Microsoft have done this generation. According to leaker Soldier Delta, who has previously leaked details on Team Ninja's upcoming PS5 open-world action RPG Rise of the Ronin, Nintendo will have 2 SKUs of the Switch 2 available at launch, a regular edition that will cost $449.99, and an all-digital edition that will cost $399.99. Launch window. Even in the absence of leaks, most would have predicted that the next Nintendo console would be launching sometime in 2024, and sure enough, that's what multiple leaks have claimed as well. In all likelihood, we're looking at a release in the second half of the year, with some leaks even having mentioned a narrower launch target of September or October. Of course, if that's accurate, we'll probably be getting an official announcement in the next few months. Or, that's the hope anyway. Again, you never know with Nintendo. Hey, did you know that we at Gaming Bolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and hit that bell, and let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.